Dai!
In my restless dreams, I see that town. Silent Hill.
The greatest and scariest survival horror game. If you know me, then it should come as no surprise that Silent Hill is the featured franchise in the final episode of this show. For one thing, its future is as foggy as the town itself, but also because it is my very favorite game. I knew that the moment I laid eyes on it at a friend's Halloween party. He was the guy in the neighborhood who built elaborate haunted houses every year with his dad, and one year I walked in, and they were playing Silent Hill 4, which had just come out. I even remember exactly which part I walked in on. The second half of the game, where Henry is descending one of the spiral staircases between worlds. Something just clicked. The bizarre setting, accented by disturbing imagery placed about like a fucked up art gallery. The footsteps combining the sounds of metallic stairs and squishy flesh. The heavy colors and slow tempo. In that moment, I knew I met something very important in my life. I stared into the abyss, and the abyss stared back at me. A hole had finally been filled, and some part of me deep down knew that I had just found the one video game to hold a higher place in my heart than all of Nintendo. Because until then, I was born and raised by Nintendo and was just starting to pick up other games like GTA. I'm not big into traditions, but I've played them nearly every Halloween since then. And the 11 months in between each time are so long and filled with so many other games that it retains its scariness, and I even sometimes forget that it's my favorite. And I fall in love with it all over again. I wanted to write this episode very carefully. Not only because it's the final episode of a series I launched my channel with, and it's about my favorite games of all time, but also because Silent Hill is a special case. In the Silent Hill fan community, there exists a division. A split as wide as the chasm at the intersection of Levin and Bloch. There are those who carry on and consider anything that Konami slaps a logo on as part of the series, and those who cut things off after the fourth entry. I am a purist. Our cause is arrogant, but righteous.
This sounds very nerdy.
The first 4 games were developed by the original internal team at Konami and set the gold standard for classic survival horror. And while most key members retired from the series one by one of their own volition, it is said that the remainders were still working on a 5th and perhaps final entry when they were forcefully disbanded by the company. And this is where the series fell apart.
She's fucking up.
The first bad omen was this: the Silent Hill movie, which, get this, wasn't even a video game.
Non-canonical.
Then there was an arcade rail shooter, more like fail shooter, and some shitty little mobile game, more like mobile lame. The next mainline entry was a futile attempt at a prequel, while the next sequel was the very maligned Homecoming, which might have been okay on its own if it wasn't forcing itself to be a Silent Hill game.
I know all about Silent Hill.
You don't know anything about Silent Hill.
Shattered memories, shitty memories, just a crappy, shitty reimagining of the original, which is a game that doesn't need to be reimagined or remade or even remastered. Dope as that sounds, more on that later. Downpour?
Are you serious?
Pachinko machines?
I don't have a son!
Oh my god, there's 2 of you?
But suddenly, in 2014, a free downloadable game was mysteriously added to the PS4 online store. It was awesome. It was scary. It was co-directed by Hideo Kojima and Guillermo del Toro, and it was called PT, which upon completing was revealed to stand for Playable Teaser. It was a playable demo trailer for Silent Hills, the long-awaited comeback of the series.
Yeah!
And like 1 stupid month later, it was canceled and PT was forever delisted. And finally, some DLC for the multiplayer action game Dead by Daylight.
Yeah, shop's closed. Fuck off.
So like I said, I had to calibrate this episode. Like Earthbound, Silent Hill is sacred, and I can't wish for Silent Hill to be my way, because then it wouldn't truly be Silent Hill. I don't even want it to be my way, I want it to be their way. That's how I liked it. I don't want me or anyone else interfering with their natural artistic vision. I mean, they did source a lot of inspirations, but still. So just like the Earthbound episode, I must filter this video through that lens. What could be in the future of Silent Hill?
Man, I fucked up.
Let's talk for a moment not only about Silent Hill, but another love of my life with the same initials. Okay, so there's the early stuff. Then Resident Evil combined these elements, polished them, and wrapped them up in a brand new identity. But Silent Hill perfected them. It set the gold standard, and it contributed the most important element to come. It ditched the B-movie shtick and emphasized the atmosphere. Cinematic camera work, disturbing imagery, oppressive sound design, symbolic stories with deep themes, and of course many a gamer's favorite 3 words, Zelda-like gameplay. And for 9 of the most glorious and goriest years, this was the trend. But then, the real horror began. Resi 4. Sometimes I think it's a masterpiece, and other times I consider it an act of terrorism. It introduced the now ubiquitous over-the-shoulder camera angle, which infected almost every game now made. Suddenly the middle of the screen became less cool and we all moved slightly to the left.
I guess something happened to the left that made everybody happy.
And due to this massive success, Konami was inspired to fuck shit up too.
Daddy, no want me. I'm gonna take a bus to Reno.
And so, I quit Silent Hill faster than I quit cigarettes.
Do you ever yearn?
I
Yearn?
for this style of survival horror to make a comeback.
Often I sit and yearn.
It's not to say horror games aren't scary these days, but I want this style to return, especially to Silent Hill. But I feel that's only possible
with a little help from some old friends.
As Konami was riding a wave of success with series like Castlevania and Metal Gear, several staff members that had failed at other projects were considering leaving the company. So, in some weirdly brilliant artistic leadership decision you'd never expect from them today, Konami banded these underachieving misfits together for one last chance at creating something amazing. And so, the greatest family of survival horror was born. 3 brothers and 1 sister, born to a small team of devoted parents. That development group was Team Silent, and in 2005, Konami showed their appreciation for all the success they earned by disbanding them, pulling the rug from under the series, pulling the series from the hands of its loving creators, licensing it to ignorant Western developers, and eroding its very essence.
So this is the thanks I get for working overtime.
It's like that Squidbillies voice act, or season 5 of Community without Dan Harmon. You can't just put someone's brainchild up for adoption. Like, there's 3 Godfathers, 7 Harry Potters, and 4 Silent Hills. I'm okay with that. Is anyone expecting or even wanting Coppola to make Godfather 4?
No!
It's over, and we've all easily accepted that, and we're able to watch them and relive their greatness whenever we want without having to continue them. Is anyone else trying to make Godfather 4 in his stead, arrogantly continuing the work of another? A work that is not as open to interpretation or collaboration as an abstract painting or a Mario sports game.
No!
I'm sorry, I I get mad. Much like its own characters, Silent Hill is a motherless child, lost forever in the abyss with orphaned peers like Donkey Kong. Reuniting Team Silent is as unreal a dream as reuniting Rareware, but since this show is all about me living out my most unrealistic dreams, let's see which key members must be involved for a true Silent Hill 5.
By the never-ending assembly of a meaningless crew.
Keiichiro Toyama, the mastermind behind the original and the creator of the series overall, officially serving as director and writer. However, he quit shortly after the first one was made, joining Sony directly to work on the Siren series and leaving Silent Hill in the hands of his former team. Strangely, his involvement is the least necessary of the bunch, but it's more than welcome. I would say just give him some sort of consultant role, but I'm going all out, so he gets to co-produce the game with Akihiro Imamura, whose experience began as the original's programmer and led to being 2's producer and 4's sub-producer. Masahashi Tsuboyama was partnered with Ito on background design for Silent Hill 1 before directing Silent Hill 2 and replacing his former partner as art director for Silent Hill 4. Kazuhide Nakazawa was the director of Silent Hill 3. Suguru Murakoshi was Silent Hill 2's drama director and Silent Hill 4's director and writer. I'm not sure if games are ever co-directed, like a Coen Brothers movie or something, but if I get to appoint 2 people for the job, I'm going with Tsuboyama and Nakazawa. Meanwhile, Murakoshi's experience as drama director for the most revered entry and writer-director for the most underrated entry would make him an ideal co-writer with Hiroyuki Owaku, who was the event and enemy programmer on Silent Hill 1, but also co-wrote that game with series creator Toyama before becoming the head writer for both Silent Hill 2 and 3. Owaku is arguably the most integral member. He is intricately responsible for everything from the individual plots and overarching story to the lightest symbolism and deepest lore, so I wouldn't have anyone else be head writer. Masahiro Ito, this guy was originally in charge of background and creature art before being fully promoted to art director for 2 and 3. Much like Owaku, his knowledge on the series is matched only by his talent for it. He's one of the more actively involved ex-members, constantly dropping clues and insights on his Twitter. No one else should even be considered as art director. And last but not least, Akira Yamaoka, the most consistent and perhaps most well-known member. His time as sound director for the first 5 games as well as producer for the third earned him the notoriety as one of the all-time greatest game composers. His music and sound design are one of the most crucial components of Silent Hill's signature atmosphere. So yeah, obviously cannot do it without him.
Dream Team?
Much like my favorite band Pink Floyd, Silent Hill was the result of many brilliant minds who somehow in a universe of random chaos existed and met at the right place and the right time. Each title was steered by a different director, and the staff traded roles and promoted internally like one big spooky family. That's why they all have a distinct flavor and feel, as opposed to the steadfast identity of Fatal Frame, for example. There were others you could argue were important, and I'd probably agree. And the absolute bare minimum I would accept would be these 3 dudes.
That's a must.
Because while it's true that there was no single consistent Team Silent, there was definitely a core group of creative leads that held multiple senior positions over multiple entries. To take a page from Nintendo's book, they don't even have to fully hire every minor member of the original team. Instead, they could place these key members in senior positions to oversee the entire project and delegate their vision to a team of faceless programmers whose creative freedom must be funneled through the leads. If there were to be a true 5th game as intended by the true creators of the series, then this would be the Dream Team.
Dream Team.
Dream Team Silent. And now it leads to the real meat of this topic. What might that game even be like?
Okay, the Dream Team is dead. But you guys had a great run.
Proposing a true Silent Hill 5 raises a few questions. Question 1. What do they do about the games that came after 4? Do they pretend they never happened? Or do they continue as if they were canon? Technically, none were truly numbered Silent Hill 5, so they could be treated as interquels like Vice City and San Andreas, but even that defeats the purpose, and I think you all know which way I lean on this one. The dream is that they ignore them all and pick up where they left off, but the nightmare is that they integrate them all and pick up where they left off. But since this show is about dreams, question 2. Is there a reason? What left is there to tell in the story? Are there holes to fill, arcs to close, new ideas to explore? The main story of Alessa Gillespie was explored in 1 and closed in 3, while 2 and 4 were side stories that did well to pad out the lore. So should Silent Hill 5 be another direct sequel to 1 and 3, and be the true conclusion to the Alessa saga? Would it be another side story with more original material? Could it somehow manage to tie all the stories together into one big grand finale? The series was genuinely brought to a close, and I've long made peace with that. But since this show is about dreams,
I'm doing it!
And question 3, what should it be like?
Atmosphere!
This is where I'm gonna be an old stickler elitist fanboy and say,
I don't like change!
I don't want over-the-shoulder and first-person perspectives. I want the cinematic fixed camera. I want the imagery and soundscape that only these guys can bring. They can still add and improve things. Graphics are an obvious upgrade. A free camera for the overworld portions. Maybe even that part can be over the shoulder. In fact, many of the portions of the games where there wasn't a fixed camera can feature an over-the-shoulder perspective. Simultaneously, areas with fixed cameras can repurpose the right stick to move the flashlight around like in Fatal Frame. I'd love more conceptualization with the music. Recurring themes like Laura's and Alessa's can be utilized like Zelda's leitmotifs, and Easter eggs hinting at the fate of past characters. The other pillar is gameplay.
Can I have just a little change?
Starting with the normal fucking health meter. I get that this was supposed to be representative of a heart monitor, but it's always been so ambiguous and frustrating, and if it was just a PS1 entry then I'd say fine, but it took them until 4 to remedy this. Additionally, the entire menu system needs a complete overhaul. It's like the only bad thing about the Silent Hill games are these fucking menus. They're not impossible to eventually understand, but a modern game would surely feature something more streamlined and attractive. Updated interface. Here's my idea for a modern control scheme mostly based on the classic gameplay. Bring back the radio and the flashlight. I would say a minimap, but a game as immersive as Silent Hill shouldn't have a cluttered HUD, so it should at least be optional. The originals all had save methods specific to the characters. Harry Mason recorded progress literally by writing notes, some of which Heather would find as she used the cult symbols. I like the narrative implications of this, but I'm so spoiled by modern games not having fixed save points anymore that I sometimes feel like, goddamn, just please give the next guy like a cell phone. In fact, depending how long after the events of the last game this one takes place, they could funnel all of these items and functionalities into a cell phone. But if you don't like the sound of that, I get it, neither do I. It wouldn't feel right not having paper maps in a Silent Hill game. As for combat, the oldies were notoriously clunkies for several reasons. Tech limits primarily. It made the experience more scary and unpredictable, although that may have just been a side effect. So as hard as it is to say, modernize the combat system. Puzzles.
I don't like change!
Silent Hill riddles were always awesome and often varied based on the difficulty settings, so I can't think of any actual improvements other than just keep doing them. Overall, I even want most of the gameplay to remain the same, but just modernized in most ways. It's basically Legend of Zelda gameplay, overworld and dungeons tied together with exploration, combat, and puzzles. If anything, the few things I propose just make it more Zelda-like. And you know I think Zelda gameplay is just... Insalata caprese! Finally, Here is my one main proposal. The town of Silent Hill was built over hundreds of years all around Toluca Lake. The first game took place in the northern region, the second introduced the southern region, the second half of the third game took place in portions of both regions, and the fourth didn't really take place in either Silent Hill or South Ashfield, but rather Walter's mental images of those places and the apartment. My pitch is an open world engine of the entire town. The first two games were fairly open, but the latter two were very linear, and none of them featured the full town. Whether they make it open-ended like Breath of the Wild or open linear like classic Zelda, I don't even care. Those both sound good, just as long as the entire area is fully traversable. And if you think they wouldn't want to recycle settings,
look closely.
The game is called Silent Hill.
Where was I gonna go, Detroit?
It's the heart of the series. A haunted town. Plus, 2 and 3 both included Brookhaven Hospital. 1 and 3 both featured Lakeside Amusement Park. They don't have to spend time and resources designing a new world from scratch, but rather take the exact map of the town and the exact floor plans of the buildings and just render them on modern hardware. And if you think the most hardcore Silent Hill fans would be bored or disappointed revisiting the same exact places,
look more closely.
Firstly, it's called Silent Hill. Secondly, nostalgia. Thirdly, relevance to the story. And fourthly, they won't have the same exact level progression design. We'd fight different enemies and solve different puzzles with different items and take differently designed routes. Depending on which character is being mentally projected, the other world will always mix things up. So just imagine open world HD Silent Hill. Old areas and dungeons brought back to life alongside new areas and dungeons. Rowing around Toluca Lake. Maybe at some point we get to actually drive one of these cars. Specifically, at least at this point. And lastly, side quests. I want some side quests. I love side quests. The closest thing to side quests in Silent Hill were the sewer ferry, multiple ending requirements, and an escort mission that's really just half the fucking main game. So in this open world setting, I want various collectibles, kill quests, fetch quests, escort missions, gathering missions, and crazy awesome multifaceted story-driven non-categorizable quests like Fallout 3's Oasis, Red Dead's Strange Man, and Anjuin Cafe. Or, you know, whatever they can think of. Just make a Silent Hill game like you normally would, but add some side content. If anything, they would have some very original ideas that I can't even dream of. Side quests you'd only find in Silent Hill. But hey, who knows? What would Team Silent have done had they not been disbanded? Would they have continued the series? Or did they really end it before Konami ended them? Would they themselves have changed it over time? Would it even have kept a consistent level of quality? What if they did get back together today? Would they go back to their roots? Would they experiment with more modern game design? Would either direction have the potential to be good or bad? This is why I actually embrace the idea that Team Silent really did just end the series, cause it cancels out all these questions and it means we're not missing out on anything. As much as I love my pitch for a true Silent Hill 5, maybe it's supposed to be this way. Maybe it's better this way. Or maybe not. Who knows? Cause maybe Kojima was a good choice. He is a master game designer and the auteur of Metal Gear. Also, he too is a Konami alum, a confessed fan of the series, of which each title had a different director anyway, and several members of Team Silent migrated to Kojima Productions after the disbandment. Wait a minute. Silent Hills. S. And if that wasn't a big enough hint.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5.
In the last few years, tons of Silent Hill merch was released through several companies. I don't know if it's a sign of something bigger to come, bolstered by recent rumors, but either way, here's some other stuff I really want. A Dark Horse encyclopedia. I would never ask for anything ever again. Holy hole. The Book of Lost Memories is already official and beautiful, but unless you're lucky enough to be Japanese, chances are you have the digital fan translation. I have the first two OSTs on vinyl, and now I need the last two. Oh shit, a digital release of this super rare DVD that I can't even find a pirated version of for some reason. Pyramid Head for Smash. First 4 figures collectibles. Oh my god, this actually happened. I first discovered these guys when I got the Majora's Mask replica, and the first thing I thought was, damn, I hope these guys make some Silent Hill stuff someday. Okay, here's the big one. The PS2 era was the greatest. For one thing, it also had the GameCube, but it was the sheer quality of the games. The crux of cinematic presentation and game design was at its qualitative peak. I know I'm gonna sound old, but I don't care. Remember before DLC and online gaming, back when games were just fucking games? The PS2 remains the highest selling console of all time. The games of that generation were so great that they were carried over to the next one in high definition bundles. So when the time came to pack a love letter to horror fans, Konami did what Konami does, and Konami'd it.
I hate this town. I really do.
The Silent Hill HD collection is
bullshit! Pure, unadulterated crap.
Oh, I love you. I love you, Dad.
Whereas Silent Hill is the most renowned horror game in the industry, the Silent Hill HD collection is infamous as the worst post-gen bundle to ever flip off a fan base. First of all, where's the first game? This thing is incomplete. I guess they figured anyone capable of playing this would also shell out 6 extra digital bucks on the PlayStation Store. Second of all, greedy. But thirdly, physical. And fourthly, for the fourth game?
I don't have a room!
So it only included 2 and 3. But they even managed to fuck that up. This thing is infamously faulty. It's been long thought that Konami either lost or never archived the original series source code, which led the collection to heavily suffer from glitches and radical changes to graphics and sound. On a side note, what about the first game? Should it get a remaster? Not a reimagining like Shattered Memories, and not even a remake exactly like Final Fantasy VII, but a shot-for-shot remaster like the Spyro and Crash trilogies. With the recent trend in resurrecting classic PS1 games, Silent Hill is the next best choice, and recent rumors have even suggested it. But, like Earthbound, it just feels wrong. It's a classic, it has historical value, but most of all, it's still good and it's still scary. In fact, the grimy graphics don't detract from the experience, but instead serve to make the game even scarier. They might not even do a shot-for-shot remake, but more like the Resi remakes. That would normally scare me more than anything, but again, like I said for a true Silent Hill 5, I actually wouldn't mind since the originals were half fixed camera angles, half typical video game tracking. So if they could preserve the original camera work while implementing the over-the-shoulder angle where it belongs, then I'd be down. And if they do remake the first in any way, please include the boiler memo this time. But again, like Earthbound, it would be weird if they gave the original a remake and just up-res the others. But again, the others are even less in need of a remake. Just remasters. So again, like Earthbound, I ask for a current-gen collector's edition of the original series, with a poster, a soundtrack, an art book, a Halo of the Sun pin, a Flauros figurine, a Mira plush, and of course the most important component, the games. A proper, working HD collection of the first 4 titles.
I love you, Dad.
Let it go.
Alright, back to my list. I want a publicly issued apology from Konami.
Sorry.
Despite Konami's terribleness, I know they must recognize the value of this IP. And I don't think this is asking for much, because once they did this, and it's the last thing on my list because I never went and it looks so fucking sick. However, I fear that most, if not all things dreamt about in this video will sadly not come true. For I am afraid the baddest, scariest, most dangerous monster in all of Silent Hill to ever rip a child from the arms of its parents is in fact...
I still love you.
I don't.
Or are they? You know, every episode of this show I felt like I had to make in a rush because I didn't want something to be announced and render the video outdated before it was even out. And except for the remake of Smash Brothers episode, I was in the clear, and this was the last episode about my favorite game, and I was steadily and casually perfecting it over 2 months to be dropped on Halloween, and then... But how can I be mad? The Silent Hill transmission. A freaking Nintendo Direct, but for Silent Hill. Time passes, and things change. And apparently, Konami is reportedly under new and competent management who actually want to take video games seriously again. And after that showcase, I think I'm inclined to finally maybe think about considering the possibility of maybe giving them another chance. First of all, the Silent Hill 2 remake. Part of me is like, should we really be remaking The Godfather or 2001: A Space Odyssey? And the other part of me is more like,
Wow, I take back everything I just said.
it will ultimately come down to how good it is on its own and how much it was preserved. The fog, the script, the puzzles, not the combat, but maybe even hopefully some of the fixed camera angles. Despite Blooper's track record, it's hard to fuck up a remake, especially the more faithful they remain. And the fact that it has the blessing and contribution of Ito and Akira so far makes me lean towards... Okay, moving on. Townfall.
Yeah, actually, I think that's a pretty good idea.
Ascension.
I don't care.
Another movie.
I would rather get shot in the face.
Okay, I know I asked for statues, but too many statues.
Oh, God damn it!
Silent Hill F.
Fuck me!
Whatever the F it is, it's fascinating. It doesn't strike me as Silent Hilly, but it is 1960s Japan, which, by the way, what the hell? So is horror writer Ryukoshi 07 making a prequel? I mean, it wouldn't be the first game directly out of the town, but still, this isn't even in the same freaking country. I don't know any more than I even know about how to feel about any of all this. Look, my fellow purists, I know it's not what we want, but what we want will probably never happen. Team Silent will never reunite. 2 guys on the remake was the best we could hope for. You want Rare and Nintendo to get back together and make Banjo 3E for the Switch? Yeah, so do I. But we can still enjoy or dislike the new games on their own merit while silently reminding ourselves...
Non-canonical!
And I know it's not the other thing we want, to preserve the first 4 games with remastered compilation, but we can still enjoy or dislike the remake on its own merit, even without letting it replace the original as the true game to us. Just do what I do and never sell your OG copies while futilely hoping for that remastered compilation. And look, if the series becomes popular enough again, then maybe it raises the chances. Ultimately, I'm cautiously optimistic. And even though maybe the series should just end, I'm actually happy that Silent Hill actually has a future.
What is with this town?
It's being invaded by the other world.
Town devoured by the darkness.
The world of someone's nightmarish delusions come to life.
I still can't believe this is the final episode. Part of me is sad, but a much larger part of me is relieved. This show was a lot of work, but it was also a lot of fun. I want to thank all of you who watched, liked, commented, subbed, and enjoyed listening to me vent out all my pent-up nerd energy by dreaming up ways of evolving and modernizing some of my favorite game series, shamelessly drooling out my wishes and ideas, arrogantly making suggestions to artists about their own work that will most likely continue to not be heard by anyone.
Bullshit!
So yeah, seriously.
Thanks.
Stinks!
Thank you. Thank you.
As for Silent Hill, I made this point at the end of my Resident Evil video. The old survival horror is dead and gone. I wish it could go back, but it probably won't. but I still gotta let people enjoy them for what they are, even if they're wrong. And besides, now the whole first-person adventure style game is scary as fuck. And plus, I'll always be able to go back and play the oldies, which will always be my favorite games ever, even if they're never made again. But you know what? I think something is gonna happen soon. I don't know when, but I can feel it. I'm waiting for some game developer out there to go retro and pitch a major throwback. Just like how pixel art and Metroidvanias were rediscovered in the indie community, I'm waiting for some AAA game developer out there to be like, remember those old PS1, PS2 survival horror games with the camera angles and scarce resources and spooky atmospheres? Whatever happened to those? We should make one. Mark my words, someday it will happen. Someday, so many of the things that I wished for in the 24 episodes of this show could happen.
That gum you like is going to come back in style.